Members should do so quickly and quietly.
The final item of business today is a members' business debate on motion number 3683 in the name of Graham Day on Keep Scotland Beautiful. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. And would those members who wish to speak in the debate please press the request to speak buttons as soon as possible. I now call on Graham Day to open the debate. 7 minutes, please, Mr. Day.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I begin by thanking colleagues on these benches, along with Alec Ferguson, Alison Johnson and those Labour members whose support of this motion has allowed what I believe to be an extremely important subject to be aired in the Chamber this afternoon. It is entirely fitting, I feel, that Parliament has an opportunity to recognise the work of Keep Scotland Beautiful and inspiring up to 220,000 Scots to take part in this year's 2-month-long clean-up, which removed 1,100 tonnes of rubbish from the environment. And in so doing, we should offer them our encouragement as they plan an even bigger and better exercise next year, the Year of Natural Scotland. But we surely must also recognise, as KSB does, that what's needed to address the littering issue isn't just volunteers trailing behind the litterers, cleaning up after them, but a culture change. We need people to realise that dropping litter or fly tipping is an unacceptable antisocial habit. In part, that might be achieved by exercising existing enforcement powers more effectively or increasing penalties to provide an enhanced deterrent, and I believe my colleague Brodie may cover that in his contribution. But it's also about fundamentally altering mindsets. I took part in one of the litter picks in my constituency, organised by Colliston Primary School. That school is located just off the crossroads on the main Arbroath to Brechin Road, which links the village of Colliston with nearby Wetham Grange. Teachers, parents and the kids set out in teams to tackle the scourge of litter in an area extending no more than 500 metres away from the school in assorted directions. Despite the relatively small amount of ground covered, we soon ran out of litter bags. Indeed, my team had to return to the school for fresh supplies within a matter of minutes. And it wasn't just the volume of rubbish we found that was disturbing, it was the nature of it too. I mean, why would anyone feel the need to dispose of a pair of Y-fronts by apparently throwing them from a moving car? Or maybe I've led too sheltered a life. Actually, our experiences were rather tame compared to elsewhere. Amongst other items found by the clean-up were a guitar, a drum, and 70 bottles of a particular brand of light perry. It must have been some party. We'd also found a bed, fish boxes, a toilet seat, a park bench, the rear seat of a car, ironing boards, a wheelie bin, and a whip. That's the kind of whip that Indiana Jones uses, not the type dreaded by backbenchers in this place. Seriously, though, these are hardly items you would drop inadvertently or accidentally. They were deliberately dumped. It was interesting before and during the litter pick I was involved in to listen to the kids on the subject of littering, to note their horror that people were abandoning food, drink and goodness knows what all around their school. Now, hopefully these youngsters will grow into the kind of adults we should be, people with a respect for the beautiful country that we're fortunate enough to live in. But, Presiding Officer, I really do believe that most of us, sadly, have almost become oblivious to the rubbish which is abandoned in our streets and our countryside, but not so many of our youngsters. Earlier this year, I was asked to judge a photography competition organised by Webster's High School, themed My Kirriemuir. Pupils have been asked to produce photographic images which encapsulated their town. We, of course, had the predictable shots of Peter Pan's statue and camera obscura, but mixed in amongst these were disturbing visuals of rubbish abandoned in the stream running through the den, and most memorable of all, a close with litter spilling out of bins and strewn across the area. That's how some kids saw Kirrie, a town spoiled by people lacking pride in their surroundings. And let's face it, those images could have come from any corner of Scotland. You really do wonder about people's attitude to littering at times. A farmer in my constituency farms at least 7 miles away from the closest fast food outlet. He was telling me about watching from a distance as a dog walker dropped a half-eaten burger and fries on the private road leading up to his property. Now, that gentleman concerned presumably had purchased his food and driven out to the countryside to consume it during a leisurely stroll with his dog, only to discover when he got there that the grub was cold, so he tossed it aside. It's an interesting contradiction. That individual valued the countryside enough to want to drive out to it and stroll in it, but had so little respect for those surroundings that he discarded his uneaten food there. That is the kind of attitude that Keep Scotland Beautiful wants to change. They want to establish a sense of civic pride. When Keep Scotland Beautiful was established more than 40 years ago, its driver was campaigning for a cleaner country. Here we are in the 21st century, and still that aspiration remains. KSB estimate that there are around 2,000 pieces of litter per kilometre on Scotland's beaches. They also estimate that in the last year they've been involved in the removal of enough litter to fill 42,000 wheelie bins. And all told, they reckon the uplift of litter is costing the country £100 million a year. We really cannot go on like this, especially when, as well as the eyesore aspect of the problem, there's also the lost recycling opportunity. The Scottish Government's planned Recycling on the Go initiative is important, as is its tasking Zero Waste Scotland with producing what is being trailed as a robust and comprehensive state-of-the-nation evidence report on litter to inform future litter strategies. The £250,000 Litter Prevention Innovation Fund, applications to which I think closed last week, will assist local authorities, community groups, landowners and businesses to support and implement innovative local schemes. But successfully tackling this issue is going to be about more than government initiatives, local authorities more effectively discharging their responsibilities, or even the many worthy small-scale local campaigns operating around the country, in which other members may choose to highlight. It has to be about personal responsibility and many more people developing a respect for their surroundings. And that's where Keep Scotland Beautiful 2013 campaign comes in. They're coming at it from this perspective. If 220,000 folk could collect 1,200 tonnes of rubbish in 8 weeks during the springtime, how much could be collected if 1 million people could be mobilised over 52 weeks? KSB hope that a successful campaign will see well in excess of 10,000 tonnes of rubbish removed from the environment. But just as importantly, they hope the campaign will succeed in changing the behaviour of the nation in relation to litter and fly tipping. They realise that to do that, they'll need to capture the hearts and the minds of individuals, communities, institutions and businesses. These are bold ambitions. But after the unprecedented response to the 2012 Spring Queen, they're optimistic there's a momentum building, with people becoming much less willing to tolerate litter and fly tipping. Presiding Officer, I hope the message from this institution today is that is very much behind Keep Scotland Beautiful's work as part of a general drive to make Scotland a cleaner, greener place. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. And I will call on George Adam to be followed by Claudia Beamish.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would like to thank Graham Day for bringing this debate here as well, because I'll probably go from a perspective that Mr Day will probably be quite surprised when I talk about Paisley and some of the local situations that we've had there with regards to, and the difference it can make if you take a different ideal with regards to rubbish. One of the problems that we have is vandalism and various graffiti and all kinds of different things happening, antisocial behaviour within an area. And I've got one community activist who, I've actually got his name written down here, but I won't actually mention the gentleman's name. But he's an elderly gentleman, lives in the south end of Paisley, and every meeting he goes to, whether it be the Community Council, whether it be the Tenants and Residents Association, or whether it be the local area committee, he always sits there and saying, what are you going to do about the Nielsen Road shops? There's graffiti all over these shops, and what are you going to do? Now, that brings up in itself an interesting debate when you're talking about keeping a whole area tidy and clean, is because it's everybody's, as Graham Day already mentioned, it's everyone's responsibility. It's not just the local authority. It's not just the kids going out after school and picking up some rubbish. It's actually all of us that actually take an involvement, and that includes local businesses, because for too long there are many businesses who will see it in our streets and cities and towns across the country where they actually forget that when they're taking money from our pockets, they have to remember they might not live in the town that they serve as a retailer, but they have to remember that they actually gain something from it and should work along with the community to ensure that they can make sure that the town is quite clean, because this can make a massive difference in so many other different things, not just on the fact that it's unsightly and it's wrong, and the fact that regeneration of town centres, you know, who's going to invest in a town centre that has rubbish going down through the street? No one, new business, is going to come in and spend thousands of pounds in something if the rubbish is there and there's bin bags not yet to be collected. So these are all issues that make a difference as well. And if you look at, from a housing perspective, We only need to look at various housing estates throughout the country to know that ones that in the 1950s and 60s were lovely, and we've all seen the pictures of it. If certain areas and certain streets are allowed to go down a routine of just letting rubbish go everywhere, everyone gives up. Everyone just leaves it, and actually it just becomes the norm. And I think by bringing this issue up, Graeme Day is doing us all a favour by making us remember that this isn't just about a campaign and an ongoing campaign about that. It's something that should be part of our life all the time. Within Renfrewshire, when we were the administration, we had the Clean Renfrewshire campaign, and we were offering community clean-ups, but it was about the ownership of the whole idea. It was our issue, our problem to deal with, and I think that is the most important thing. One thing we also did, which wasn't too popular, was they give the warden service the powers to actually book everybody for any kind of littering and the like in the town. But that did make a difference. It wasn't popular initially, but it did make a difference within the area as well, and helped towards changing the culture. As Graeme Day already mentioned, this is something we have to do. We have to say that fly tipping is totally unacceptable, because 1 minute it's just one part, then it's just non-stop. So just in closing, Presiding Officer, I'd like to thank Graeme Day for bringing this forward, and say that we have to actually all work in this together, because the whole point of the campaigns that I've been involved with at local level has been that we're all in it together, and it's Clean Renfrewshire. And that made the difference, and that was the message we had to get across, that every single one of us had to be responsible.
Thanks very much. Now call on Claudia Beamish, to be followed by Chick Brodie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. As a long-term community and environmental activist, Eco-Schools Coordinator and now Shadow Minister for Environment and Climate Change, I also want to thank Graeme Day for focusing our minds on Keep Scotland Beautiful's 2012 National Spring Clean campaign and with the members' debate, and for setting our sights on the next campaign in 2013. This debate is vital to highlight the major contribution that is needed to urgently improving our local environment from communities across Scotland. I also want to pay tribute to the work done by Keep Scotland Beautiful. Almost 60 years ago, the National Federation of Women's Institutes set out to keep Britain tidy by trying to stop littering and encourage a pride in local environments. This work has continued in various forms since then, and the remarkable achievement of 120,000 participating in their campaign recently, and likely thousands more unofficially participating, shows it is as strong as ever. Presiding Officer, when I first came to Scotland 20 years ago, a farmer's wife, myself and a couple of others had a vision of turning a dump at our local village in Douglas Water in Clydesdale into a community nature reserve. Some members of the local community council laughed when we first raised the possibility of cleaning the area up, which had been undermined by years of dumping and neglect. Yet years later, when it had been cleared up by volunteers and cars had been taken out of the burn by divers, there was once again pride in the local area, and this was done with financial and advice support by a range of organisations. This shows that there needs to be a behavioural change in order for local communities to take ownership of their own local area, and that through ownership can then again take pride again in their neighbourhood. This is highlighted by the briefing from the Carnegie Trust, who've just done a new report called Pride in Place, Tackling Environmental Incivilities, which I would highlight in this debate today. The specific initiatives organised by Keep Scotland Beautiful, such as the annual Spring Clean, help build links between schools, their communities and local businesses. A P6 pupil wrote to a local hotel in the community where I worked as a primary teacher, and he asked if the school could clear the burn between the hotel and the school. And the owner got involved and was not only delighted to have the burn cleared, of course, but pleased to be working alongside the local school children, building community links. KSB administers the Eco Schools programme as well, for which I was responsible when an Eco Schools coordinator. According to KSB website now, over 3,000 schools are signed up as Eco Schools. This programme engages children and young people to learn about the key issues, including environment, sustainability, local citizenship, and, of course, litter. Pupils take ownership of the problem of littering, and assessments for the coveted green flag, for example, put an emphasis on clean playgrounds and playing fields. As a result, many schools now operate a rota of litter pickers, which not only get pupils to physically be involved in keeping their school tidy, but also teaches them skills such as organisation, taking responsibility, and making them feel owners of their own community. Even more Significantly, recycling and reusing becomes common parlance, and through a cultural shift, litter can almost become a thing of the past. The significance of developing children and young people's understanding of a sustainable future from local to global, in my view, is fundamental to the future of our planet. And this work by Keep Scotland Beautiful is often overlooked. This work also flows through to parents and others at home when children go home and tell them what's been going on. Presiding Officer, there are still those, unfortunately, as highlighted by Graham Day and George Adam, who don't think litter matters, who don't take any personal responsibility for the state of their own local community. The 2013 National Spring Clean is an opportunity for us all to help change that, to involve our communities in making their neighbourhoods better, and by clearing up a little more litter along the way. Thanks to Graham Day.
Thank you very much. Now calling Chick Brodie to be followed by Jamie McGregor.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I too welcome Graham's motion today, and he ended up speaking of a cleaner, greener, more sustainable Scotland. We all support that. Now, I'd like to focus on the clean part and indicate the impact that I think it has on the latter two. And as he also alluded, I've indicated that I may wish to bring forward a private member's bill on litter, because litter is not just a zero waste issue. Although working with Zero Waste Scotland, it clearly is. It's an issue to further beautify Scotland, but also to increase morale and improve and boost confidence. Action is needed. Renewed action is needed to further preserve and improve Scotland's beauty and environment, and that becomes increasingly important as we approach 2014 with the anticipated number of visitors we will have then. The responsibility for clearing litter from Scotland's streets and public areas lies with our local authorities, but not just with it. It lies also with us. And I don't want to dwell on the obvious opportunities in terms of recycling waste to energy that Graham mentioned, but it is a fact in case. The local authorities are failing in some cases. Duties given to them by the Environmental Protection Act of 1990 manifestly in some areas are not being met. COPLA, the standards in the Code of Practice on Litter and Refuse, these standards are not being met. We have to ask, if these standards are there and they were so important, why are they not being applied and why are they not being met? One can walk down the Canongate, walk down tonight, see the black bags burst all over the place. We've had a recent report on Ayr and Stonehaven beaches. I did a radio phone-in a couple of months ago in West Sound and Ayr, talking about litter, and the number of phone calls that we had was quite striking. Graham mentioned about driving and the throwing of material. I have to say that it's only high-class Y-fronts we have on the A77, but it is an issue. We have the fact that fly tipping is unacceptable. You know, we can fine people £40,000 for fly tipping, put them in prison for 6 months. We don't apply the legislation. And of course, there's the impact that all of this has on health and safety. And it's not just that. Local problems like litter, graffiti, dog fouling have a major social impact on well-being and the quality of life. It defines people and communities. There is a correlation, clearly, between deprived areas and affluent areas, Presiding Officer. 44% of people in our most deprived areas, neighbourhoods, encounter problems with litter and rubbish, compared to 17% in the most affluent areas. And there are various other factors and measurements to substantiate that particular thing. So we need action, and more than just voluntary action has been mentioned. That's why I talked about the Members' Bill. We have to look at the strengths that we have in terms of, that we can create in terms of awareness, education, and indeed, regrettably, the penalties. Awareness to highlight behavioural change, to focus on the impact on communities, on our environment and climate. And although some work has been done in terms of coastal clean-up, we still have more to do. And of course, we have to have more education in schools and in communities. And we have to create enterprises, as has been done in Dundee, with a Clean Clothes Company, that have cleaned up a city that used to be recognised by some people as probably the dirtiest in Scotland. It is not now. So all of these things are required. Scotland, at its heart, is beautiful. We have now to tidy up the body of Scotland. I support the motion.
Thank you very much. Now call on Jamie McGregor, after which we'll move to the Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I too congratulate Graham Day on securing today's important debate. I would also want to commend all my constituents throughout the Highlands and Islands who participated in this spring's National Spring Clean. The extent to which local residents across the Highlands and Islands got involved is demonstrated in that there were around 40 Spring Clean sessions in Argyll and Bute alone, involving 1,934 children and 591 adults. This included a wide variety of groups and individuals, including the staff at the Loch Fyne Oysters at the head of Loch Fyne, who organised a beach clean-up early in April. Rumours that they found a pocketbook belonging to Gordon Brown are unconfirmed, although there was a mass of sweetie papers underneath where John Prescott had been sitting. It also involved pupils from numerous schools, including Strachar, Kieran, Toward and Strone primaries and Dunoon Grammar School. It's fantastic to see such a strong volunteering spirit, and all of us would want to see that sense of community pride repeated in next year's Spring Clean, and indeed ideally to become an effort that's repeated throughout the year. I have been chairman of the Loch Awe Improvement Association since 1992, and I remember the first clean-up we had in 1993, organised by our volunteer wardens. It resulted in over 1,000 black bags of rubbish from the banks of Loch Awe, which somewhat overwhelmed the Argyll and Bute Council. But I wish to send a wish to the Council that they should back up the efforts of volunteers in enabling them to clean up areas of greater beauty by providing litter bins free of charge. And I would love to take this opportunity to thank the retired schoolmaster at Eridine in Argyll, Donald Beckett, who has devoted so much of his own free time over very many years to pick up litter left by others in order that the public may enjoy the banks of Loch Awe. All of us here support the aims of Keep Scotland Beautiful, and while clean-ups are vital in removing the presence of litter and improving the condition of our communities for local residents and tourists alike, all of us would also support tackling the scourge of littering itself. Prevention is better than cure. Keep Scotland Beautiful is to be commended for the work it is doing in our schools and communities in this regard. Where adequate litter bins and receptacles are available, we should all back a zero-tolerance approach to dropping litter. Councils could play a better part in providing more litter bins and emptying them more regularly. In Inverness, Keep Scotland Beautiful is working in conjunction with Highland Council and the Inverness Business Improvement District to tackle the littering of cigarette butts on streets and pavements, as well as the visual blight. Cigarette butts can become trapped between paving stones and washed into drains and can cause blockages, which in turn lead to flooding. They also leak toxins that contaminate water and can harm marine life. Many smokers believe butts are biodegradable, but due to their plastic content, they can in fact take 10 years to 12 years to degrade. Highland Council is also to be congratulated for the campaign it is running to prevent people dropping their used chewing gum on the streets. May I make a plea to yachtsmen off the coast of Scotland, Scottish mainland and the islands not to throw their plastic rubbish over the side. It all gets washed up on our beaches and especially within the Clyde estuary, and it's a blight on the beautiful scenery and a danger to wildlife. The Scottish Conservatives are happy to support Graham Day's motion and the work that Keeps Scotland Beautiful is doing across the country. We hope that the Spring Clean 2013 can be an even greater success and encourage local groups, schools and individuals to become involved in taking practical action which can make our localities more attractive and better for both local residents and for the tourists who come to our country. Thank you.
Thank you. Now move to the Minister. Minister, up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank my colleague Graham Day for securing this members' debate, and it's clear we all agree that Keep Scotland Beautiful is to be congratulated on the success of its annual National Spring Clean campaign and the very valuable contribution it makes to our environment. The growth from 11,500 volunteers in 2007 to the more than 117,000 taking part this year is a fantastic achievement which we should celebrate. And the Scottish Government itself has supported National Spring Clean with £116,000 of funding from our delivery partner Zero Waste Scotland. Reflecting the value placed upon National Spring Clean, the 2012 event was actually launched in March this year by the Cabinet Secretary in Portobello alongside school children. And I guess Graham Day is quite right to highlight this issue. It's one of the few things that can be as corrosive, really, to our pride in our communities as the preponderance of litter that we see on our streets and in our beautiful country lanes and countryside. So I certainly identify with all the points that have been raised by colleagues in the chamber. Littering and fly tipping are problems that continue to blight many communities. Indeed, the Scottish Household Survey for 2011 indicated that 25% of residents in Scotland who were responding to that agreed that litter was a serious problem for them. And, Presiding Officer, the fact that around 1 in 50 of the population actually participated in the National Spring Clean officially in 2012 further underlines the strength of that feeling. So more than 75,500 of those who participated were actually school children, and I think Claudia Beamish is quite right to highlight the significance of eco-schools. Many schools have signed up to the International Eco-Schools programme now, which encourages whole school action for the environment with a mandatory topic on litter, which I think is very important from the education point that George Adam and others have raised. The Scottish Government is funding Keep Scotland Beautiful to support the programme, and Scotland is one of the world leaders, with our 1500th green flag being officially awarded tomorrow to Mearns Castle High in East Renfrewshire. And events like National Spring Clean are not only a great way of tackling litter heads-on and removing a blight from our streets, parks and lanes, but they also help raise public awareness. However, the litter that National Spring Clean volunteers pick up should not be there in the first place. We need to change the culture, and Graham Day again is quite right to highlight this, as is others, including Chick Brodie. This is totally unacceptable, and it should be seen as totally unacceptable to all, not just the majority of the public. I genuinely believe see it that way at the moment. And during my own local villages, litter picked for a Floral Gateway competition in the Borders this year, I and colleagues were picking litter from the verge of a local B road. We passed a couple of cars filled with young men in their 20s. We returned back along the same route 10 minutes later, just a mere 10 minutes, to find 3 new cigarette packets and a can of Coke that had been left behind. And, this truly infuriated me, I have to say. I've probably never been closer to actually resembling Victor Meldrew in terms of my behaviours. I think I actually even said, I can't believe it. While children help clear up, those who should know better are creating more litter, and this matters. It really does matter, I think, that we tackle this. As well as litter being an unnecessary eyesore which can deter visitors and investors, is a point that others have made, litter can, of course, cause an actual risk to health. And if the valuable materials are being wasted that could have been recycled, that's also a real loss to society. And I can assure the Chamber that the Scottish Government is committed to tackling the problem, and I personally take this issue very seriously. The Scottish Government, as has been mentioned by Graham Day, have tasked Zero Waste Scotland with producing a State of the Nation of Evidence report on litter. A steering group involving Keep Scotland Beautiful is guiding research that's investigating the wider cost of litter to society, analysing litter enforcement trends and the effectiveness of current legislation, and considering how best to influence littering behaviour and successful approaches to tackling the problem. That report is due early next year and will provide a powerful basis for our future approach to tackling littering, which is both antisocial and damages our habitats. In parallel with this work, Zero Waste Scotland has launched 2 new funds to further help address the problem. It's funding a new £250,000 litter prevention innovation fund for local authorities, community groups, landowners and businesses, which will support local innovative approaches to tackling and preventing litter, and repeating last year's successful £75,000 fly tipping small grant scheme to help local communities tackle and prevent fly tipping. These schemes can help local organisations to make a real difference to their environment. And, for example, last year, Friends of Postle Park Green Space in Glasgow were awarded just over £5,000 to clear fly tipping from the park and re-landscape the area to make it more inviting for the local community. And we hope to establish, through studying the impacts of these particular grants, what works and what doesn't work, and hopefully we can learn something from that. Zero Waste Scotland has also made £500,000 available to support the rollout of more Recycle on the Go facilities across Scotland, along with guidance on how to make the most from installing these facilities in public places, such as shopping centres and high streets. These new style bins allow people to recycle where they're out and about. It takes away the excuse that there's nowhere to put the waste, and help turn the problem of litter into materials which can be used again. We're keen to see the number of such facilities increase substantially, and Richard Lockhead has also written to all councils last month to highlight these opportunities, as well as to remind them of the enforcement powers to penalise people on litter. And I encourage all councils and indeed the police to make use of these powers to impose fixed penalty fines of £50 for littering. And it's vital that people understand littering is unacceptable, it is antisocial, and indeed it is a criminal offence. I've personally been shocked, I don't know whether others in the Chamber have been, to hear people say occasionally it's in some way excusable to help keep someone in a job by leaving a litter around. I have actually heard that uttered by members of the public, and it really does say that attitudes must change. Zero Waste Scotland are piloting deposit, return and reverse vending of drinks containers to see which approaches are most effective. And clearly, as well as driving recycling, giving containers a value will hopefully reduce the proportion which become litter in the first place. And reflecting the harm that irresponsibly disposed of carrier bags can do, we're consulting on proposals for retailers to charge 5 pence for a single-use carrier bag, with proceeds going to charitable good causes. We want to encourage people to reuse their bags where possible, and experience from other areas shows that this measure is highly effective in reducing the number of bags used and left as litter. Presiding Officer, litter such as carrier bags does cause problems on our land, but also our forthcoming marine litter strategy will address the problems of marine and coastal litter referred to by Chick Brodie and others, which give cause to the need for annual beach clean events organised by organisations such as the Marine Conservation Society. In closing, Presiding Officer, in the next couple of years, Scotland will host high-profile events such as the Ryder Cup and the Commonwealth Games. We all want the watching world to see Scotland, one of the world's most beautiful countries, at its very best. And we will continue to work with Zero Waste Scotland, Keep Scotland Beautiful and others to tackle litter and deliver a cleaner, greener Scotland and indeed to keep Scotland beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now close this meeting of Parliament.